Welcome back. Today I had the opportunity to talk with Jahna Rae, who is a painter and a muralist in Denver, Colorado. She is also PlatteForum's first Community Mentee Resident Artist, which is a new residency program that PlatteForum has just started alongside their regular residency program. Jahna Rae received her degree in illustration at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. And in this episode, Jahna and I will talk about her impetus for creating, the personal meaning behind her portraits, including the mental health struggles that have made her a stronger person and artist. So please, if you can, visit her upcoming solo exhibition, Indigo, at PlatteForum's Annex Gallery at 3575 Ringsby Court, number 103 in Denver. The exhibition opens on January 13th at 6 p.m. and it will be up until January 28th. And you can check out PlatteForum's website for more information. And that is PlatteForum.org. I hope you enjoy this episode.
My name is Jahna Rae. I'm an artist, illustrator, and muralist in Denver. I've been doing art for about my entire life, but I would say it was the last 2 years where I've been really pursuing my art career here in Denver. I'm primarily a portrait artist, but I've been experimenting more with abstract work.
You're the first resident artist to be part of this residency, which is called the Community Mentee Artist in Residence. Was that right?
Correct.
So how has this experience been as a resident?
It's been great. Not only has it supported me professionally and connected me to really great people in the art community and given me many resources, but it's also been supportive in the way of mental health. You know, they're providing a stipend for therapy. I've been able to talk about vulnerability in my work with several mentors. So yeah, I feel supported emotionally as well as professionally.
That's crazy. I didn't know the extent of the residency. I thought it was just sort of a residency for emerging artists. I had no idea that it supplied that kind of support.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible. I think that that was their goal, to create a very safe space for the artists to feel free to explore with their work and, like I said, feel safe to do so and supported so.
Because a lot of the work that you make, I know, does kind of circle around issues of mental health in your life. So going back to your work, I know that that's a recurring theme in your work, but how does that connect to your inspiration to create as an artist?
I think that it connects to my inspiration to create because I find my own healing and peace while painting. It doesn't always necessarily have to be about me or my story. I feel like sometimes I'll hear a story or even a song of poetry that I find inspiring and healing in its own way. And if somebody else can see that through my work and create their own story and connection through it, I think that's really fulfilling.
Yeah. I think your work is really beautiful.
Thank you.
I really enjoy it, and I just love the shapes and the new direction you're going with the abstraction.
I'm trying to, I often, even with my portraits, I get this need to get a lot of colors and shapes out, and I thought it would be interesting to focus solely on that in some of my pieces and kind of dissect some of the emotion that goes behind the portraits themselves.
I feel like the creative process is so unique to the individual, and it's so unique to the medium, that whatever medium people are working in. And so I'm always curious to know, if you could dissect your creative process, what does it look like?
It changes.
Yeah.
But first, I think I get that spark. I find a lot of inspiration through music and poetry.
Okay.
And that kind of like drives my need to create something. But then for the idea itself, when I'm being like really structured and trying to go start to finish, I will do some really rough sketches in my sketchbook and play around with different colors and patterns there. And then sometimes it's before or after, but I'll find like an image or take an image of a person that I feel like would fit the overall message that I'm going for. But there are times where I just completely wing it, and like I just kind of go with whatever I'm feeling, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're choosing a figure or somebody to do a portrait of, is that generally like someone in your life that you know, or is it someone that you're creating from scratch?
Sometimes I create from scratch. I have done some people that I know from my life. Other times I like to just use a reference to get a vague idea of just figure reference, so I know which way the eyes are tilted, and like there's never really too specific of a reason of why I pick someone. It just sometimes just feels right.
Okay. Do you feel like you understand the painting or the piece of work like after you've created it, or do you feel like it's already kind of set before you make it?
Yeah, sometimes I go into it thinking I know what it's about, and then it isn't until maybe like a few months pass and I've been staring at it and sitting with it where there's like a whole new connection to the piece and whole meaning behind it that I didn't necessarily realize at first.
Yeah.
I mean, even creating this collection of my newer pieces, I think it took some like self-reflection to be like, why am I so drawn to these like figures and these people and patterns? And that's when I'm able to kind of dissect and go into the meaning behind it. But there are times when I have a very specific reason of creating. I would say that my more abstract work I've gone in with an emotion or something that I want to take a harder look at before making it.
Okay. I have that too with artwork that either I made myself or with work that I bought for some reason and don't know why I bought it and hung it on the wall, and I sit with it and I'm like, oh my God, no wonder I was so drawn to that. But with your own work, it's almost like, how when a friend comes to you and they like have some thing they're going through and you're like, oh duh, he's obviously like this and you should do this, or it's almost like you can see somebody else's situation so much clearly and then you can see your own.
Totally.
I feel like it's kind of like that with creative work too, where like it's almost like you're working, especially if you work intuitively, you're working on something and you're so in it and it's so much a part of you that you can't really separate it from yourself, so it's hard for you to see all of the connections and the meanings and the things that are there. Whereas other people will come in and be like, oh, that's cool, that's like totally about this or that, or
Yeah, I agree. There's been some interpretations of my work that I heard and I was like, wow, that's incredibly beautiful, and I love that you took that away from what I created, and I almost like now I have new meaning in this piece too. And I'm actually really grateful for those moments where other people create a story or resonate with what I've created, because like you said, I'm so in it and I look at it every day, and you're right, it's kind of hard to disconnect from that work mode on it.
Yeah, you're so close to it.
Totally.
Yeah. So can you tell me about a piece that maybe where that happened to you, where you were sitting with it and then one day you just realized?
So that piece on the right, on the bottom right.
Okay. Yeah.
That's titled Mary. And the
frame is beautiful.
Thank you. I'm really excited about the frames.
Yeah.
So I ended up titling it Mary, and I was like kind of not even sure why I felt drawn to do that. And I almost wanted to make like an unexpected biblical figure, and different from what like most people expect or like how they stereotype it. And so while she's like hidden away, there's still all these aspects of her that are like quite obvious and beautiful that, I think that she's still kind of learning to accept herself. So a while back, I read a book called The Book of Longings, and it's the story of told like as if Jesus was a regular man and he was actually married. And so his wife was a writer, and at the time, she was not like allowed to be that, but she had opinions and thoughts of her own that she felt like compelled to share and write. And while she couldn't actually do that and pursue that in her own life, she still embodied those things and was like a pretty powerful figure. So that's kind of how I pieced it together after I made it. Yeah.
So you were processing all of those
Right.
things and then
Yeah.
you were creating this.
Totally.
Not realizing the connection. Or?
Exactly.
Okay.
And yeah, it wasn't until it was finished where, I kind of put the pieces together, but I would be interested to hear on how like other people interpret that's, the same thing with how she's mostly covered, and yet there's these like bright, very stark contrasts in the colors and shapes and patterns. So
it's really striking, and I think it can be interpreted so many different ways. And I know I said something about it last time I was here, and I can't remember at all what I said.
I know. I wish we almost recorded that.
But I think it's interesting that she's sort of cloaked and hooded, and she's sort of adorned in all of these colorful, beautiful, vibrant, lively patterns that also seem multicultural at the same time. And somebody who's immersed in a lot of different activities, or somebody that immerses themselves in the world in a certain kind of way, but maybe their inner sacred part of themselves is kind of hidden away, but then they display this other kind of reality to the world, because her gaze too is pretty serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one on the left, in the bottom left, I named First Impressions, and I think again, like, she's cloaked as well. And I think I went with this piece because, in my own experience, I think people always see like what I'm like successful in, and how I'm kind and those things, but they aren't really aware of like everything else that's going inside of, in my brain, and all my own issues and like darknesses, and so I kind of wanted to use the cloak as a way, like as a beautiful thing, like what everyone else sees, but meanwhile she's black and white, and there's like a lot more that's going on beneath the surface.
Yeah, that really speaks a lot to like you said, mental health issues, but also I think just to this social media culture and just the things that we portray to each other via social media, that it's really good to like be celebrated and get validation, but sometimes we're not telling the whole story. It can feel so hard and isolating to look at everybody else's successes constantly.
Yeah.
Especially if you struggle with any kind of mental health issue.
Exactly.
A lot of people can really relate to that.
Yeah.
I certainly can relate to that.
Yeah, I think in experiences where people have told me like, oh, you're like so confident and successful and all these things, and I'm like, that's not really how I'm feeling about it. And like, meanwhile I'm comparing myself to other artists that are far more successful than I am, and I do think that like the social media culture creates that insecurity, but I also think it is important to feel, I don't know, I think it's a really great compliment for someone to view you that way, even if you're not feeling it yourself. So yeah,
I feel the same way too. I think like I try to celebrate my successes and like accept compliments and things like that, but internally, like I definitely struggle with imposter syndrome and the fear that maybe I don't deserve the small successes or the things that I've earned
Right.
from working so hard, which is completely absurd.
It is. Yeah. It's almost like you have to start living through the lens of other people, like, so when someone does give me a compliment on a piece that I'm not particularly proud of or feel like great about, I just try to be like, well, they see something that I'm not seeing, so I'm going to believe them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really healthy too.
I'm trying.
Yeah. But so, I mean, speaking on that topic, I did see a little bit about your upcoming show and the statement that you posted. And there was a quote in there that I really liked. That was, facing discomfort has led me from a place of avoidance to engagement. And I was wondering if you could maybe just expound upon that thought a little bit.
Yeah, I think, through therapy and time and different experiences, I realized that I was mostly just coping with the aftermath of different traumas and identity issues. But it wasn't until, I would say 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, in 2020, where I was like, wow, I'm really avoiding the root cause of this trauma, and even how I've played a role in my own suffering. And because of me avoiding that, I wasn't able to heal. I wasn't able to connect the dots. And so by doing that, I finally was able to find value in the things I've gone through, instead of feeling like, why me? Why anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Bad things happen to good people. And yeah, I think that's kind of what I meant by it, was engaging with my life and my mental health and the issues I've gone through and created on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of bravery and courage, I think, to do that. Yeah, I've definitely gone on my own mental health journey as well, and had no idea that I was avoiding things. And it comes up now and again. Where
Right.
I'm like, oh, I'm doing it again.
Yeah.
But yeah, therapy has been immensely helpful in order to go through it and come out the other side.
Right.
In a way that I can enjoy life.
Exactly.
Without being hung up on all of these things that I experienced in the past,
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that that's been a similar experience for you. It's always comforting to know that you're you're not the only one who's finally nitpicking all these little things that, either trigger you and why they're triggering you. And there is so much healing in that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then there's this thing too about triggers, where I feel like the whole point of naming a trigger is so that you can get better when that thing happens again, so that you have less and less of an intense emotional reaction to it, so that it becomes normalized in a way. And I feel like there's this thing happening culturally where people are using that word, you triggered me, in the wrong way. It can be used the wrong way, where it's almost like a method of controlling somebody, don't trigger me, which I think is really toxic.
It is.
Yeah, it's just something that I've witnessed.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that today, where there's this imbalance of almost toxic positivity, where everyone you have to be positive all the time, but also toxic negativity, where people are throwing the word narcissist out and triggers and all, and trauma in the wrong way, and again, I think that is part of the avoidance. You're almost separating what happened from yourself by doing that. But I agree, and I don't think it's healthy, and I think it's harder to convey to someone yes, I was triggered, but that's not because of you, it's because of my past experiences, and it's something that I'm working on.
Yeah.
And this is how either I can or you can go about it next time, so that maybe I won't have this reaction.
Yeah, that's what I try to do, but it's so freaking hard.
It's
to be
hard.
Vulnerable like that, and to just develop the communication skills to talk about it when you're in the midst of intense
Exactly.
emotion.
Yeah.
You know?
Something like I always felt like I was like this vulnerable person, and I think that I can be that way with like my closest friends, but it wasn't until recently, especially with learning how to talk about my art, that I realized that like I am not that vulnerable, and to be able to begin to express to people like how I want to be treated and like how I want to treat myself has been it's been it's been a difficult process, but like I've gotten a lot out of it by doing that and like pinpointing those things and saying it out loud. That piece of vulnerability is like really hard to connect with, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's also something that we don't learn in school or when we're young.
No.
And I don't even think a lot of parents talk about it, to be honest. Like we don't learn how to advocate for ourselves. We don't learn about our emotions in this way,
Right.
where you're like, it's either like avoid your emotions or you're too emotional, and there's no, I mean, I maybe it's happening now in the world somewhere. Like there's really good teachers and mentors out there nowadays, and there's so many like amazing YouTubers that like address these things that were never addressed, at least when I was a child.
Right.
But I feel like it should be part of our education system. You know, like mental health should be instilled in
young people, especially. Yeah, I think it's kind of easy to like blame a previous generation on our issues and our trauma. But when I think about it, like we have so many more resources than like my parents did. And so, you know, like while they had their own gaps in how they raised me, they definitely gave me gifts and did the best that they could with what they had at the time. Yeah. And now I actually feel like I'm in a position where I can like hopefully pass on some of what I've learned to other people and like even teach my parents a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing that through your art, and I think that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
This is your first solo exhibition?
This is my first ever solo exhibition.
Congratulations.
I'm so excited. I'm nervous, terrified, but I'm getting a lot out of it, and I'm like so happy. I feel really happy.
Good.
Yeah.
So how's it been different preparing for this versus other exhibitions or projects you've been in?
Well, I've never like actually seen the entire planning of an event like this, you know, from start to finish, the marketing, just hanging work. Normally I'm like, all right, here's the piece, bye. And then just show up for the opening. But like, I've really enjoyed having a little piece in every aspect that's gone into this. Maybe because I'm a little bit of a control freak, but also like I really enjoy how like things work and the process of them. I've always been a like behind the scenes girl. So it's been immensely different than any other show I've been in. And I hope to one day like be able to do it again.
Yeah. I think you will. What part of the process do you think that you enjoyed the most?
Well, obviously like the creating, but I'm actually really looking forward to like hanging the work and like creating the experience so like that it all flows and people like traffic flows and, you know, where people can congregate and like what the studio space is going to look like so they can come in and see where I work. And so like that's what I'm like really excited about. Like the function of the actual day of the show is what I'm excited about.
Yeah, there's something about seeing a whole body of work in one room that's arranged in a specific way to either tell a story or evoke certain emotions or feelings or ideas, you know. And it's, as an artist and a curator, it's like one of my favorite things ever to be able to do that. So I'm glad that you got to have this opportunity.
Right. Yeah. Like even making the mural, like I want people to like come in and see that first. And I think that that's kind of a summary of the entire collection. And I love that it's temporary too. So, you know, like emotions are temporary, like they're visitors and then they leave. So yeah, I'm really excited just to like see how people feel when they first walk in.
Well, I very briefly glanced at the mural, and it the abstract pieces that are kind of floating around her head make me think of this like abstraction of like what's inside of your head and like the brain and
yes,
that whole part of your world.
I'm glad you got that out of that, because like that is part of the meaning behind it for sure.
What are you looking forward to as far as like the future of your work and like where you see it going?
So I do paint murals, and I'm excited to do more public art like that. I really love accessible art. It's part of the reason why I'll be like selling prints at my show as well, because I want everyone to, you know, maybe you can't buy a piece of art for a few $100s, but you can buy a print for like 60, you know, and because like it meant something to you. So yeah, I'm hoping to do more with my murals. Hopefully learn how to actually spray paint well. It's much harder than it looks, and I have so much respect for people who do giant spray paint murals. Like, they're amazing. And also, I want to continue with portraiture and abstract work, but I would like to shift more into using oils instead of acrylics, as well as kind of playing with some like 3D elements and different mediums, to give it more depth and I guess more meaning behind it, because there's like little aspects of little objects that I think would enhance it.
That sounds awesome.
Thanks.
For me personally, it's hard for me to stick to a medium, and I don't have the patience to be a painter. Because I think it requires
I don't know if I do either.
A lot of patience, but you are. And so when you said like attaching objects and things like that, I resonate with that, because I can't, like, I'm so all over the place.
Right.
I'm just like, oh, I want to try this, and I want to try that, and I
Yeah.
want to do this.
I feel like I veered away from it. Like in college and kind of early on work, I feel like I did a lot of mixed media stuff and played with paintings inside a frame, inside another frame, like that kind of stuff. And I don't know at what point I kind of got away from that. I don't know if it was because like lack of space to create, but it's definitely something I would love to get back to.
Yeah, environment really plays a huge role in like what you're able to do and how you function as a human, and like and determines like what systems you stick to and don't stick to.
Right.
That's something I've been thinking about a lot as we get into the new year, because I'm like sort of thinking about, okay, like I want to do these things, but I need to set up my life in a certain way to make them easier.
Exactly.
And I feel like it's like that with art too. It's like if you set up your studio a certain way, or if you have a certain amount of space, or if you're organized or whatever, like it just creates more opportunity to like grow and move into those other mediums and explorations.
Yeah, and I think that's why this residency has been so beneficial, because like now I have the room to spread out and kind of create, and that I don't have at my home in my second bedroom, which is not even a quarter of the size here.
That's awesome. If somebody was interested in applying to this residency in the future, I mean, what kind of artist and at what stage would you suggest that like they apply, or like who would it benefit most, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask based on your experience.
Yeah, I guess somebody who also like hasn't necessarily had the space or opportunity to grow in their art, but don't lack the ideas or motivation to create. And I think, I'm sure they got a ton of like great applications, but I would think somebody who's just like, let me spread out and I'll give you a great show, whatever their medium is. And and I think also having that access to the mental health services, well, you know, not that someone like has to have, like needs it to
or
do
has
this.
to use it.
Right.
Yeah,
or has to use it. But for me, I think it's been beneficial to like get more confident in what I'm creating. So maybe someone who even needs that little bit of boost too.
That's nice. Yeah. I feel like we could all use that little
right.
bit of boost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The last few years, I think, have been hard on everyone. I think it's been like since 2020, a lot of people have been kind of pivoting in the way that they think and express themselves. And it's been beautiful and chaotic.
I'm trying to lighten up because I feel like things were so heavy the last couple of years that I'm trying to be nicer to myself, less critical, and have more fun.
Right.
But not because I don't normally do those things, but because the last 2 years I didn't really do those things very much.
Right.
And I was recently listening to this other podcast where this guy was talking about how he asked all these people on their deathbeds what they regretted the most. And one of the things was that they were not kinder to themselves when they made stupid little mistakes in social settings.
Right.
And that they need to realize that those moments are so fleeting and small, and then it's gone, and that person probably never thought about it again, and like you don't need to like beat yourself up in your head about it.
Totally.
And I just thought that was so weird that was one of the things that was reoccurring, because that's something that I do to myself, and it's so pointless, and it can be damaging.
It can.
And it can prevent you from enjoying yourself in settings like that. So that's one of my
I think that's a great one. I think everyone should try to do that. It's not easy. And therapy, that's something that I've been working on myself. It's not be like self-deprecating too. And like you said, like all these little things are fleeting and it's temporary and it happened. And most people say you had an embarrassing interaction, like they're probably not thinking about it anymore. So like, why are you still giving it energy when there's so much more going on in the present moment that can be enjoyed?
I had a friend that once said awkwardness was the spice of life. And I think that's really funny, because I think that there is a lot of art in film that's kind of made around the idea of awkwardness. And there was even a time, and maybe it's still a time, when people found that really endearing in a person, so yeah, let's not beat ourselves up too much.
I love that. And I love, like, I consider myself pretty awkward and like just nerdy. I think it took me a while to feel like, oh, I don't have to be the cool girl. Like that actually sounds really exhausting. To just be like cool and chill all the time and, completely level-headed all the time. Like that's just not who I am. I have my quirks and, and so like looking at those moments of being awkward or, maybe doing something that's like less than flattering, but being like, you know what? I did it. It happened. I'm going to laugh about it, hopefully in the future.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad we can agree to be kinder to ourselves.
Exactly. 2023.
Okay. I have 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
One of them is also about mental health, since we're like kind of on that topic, but do you have any tools, that are your go-tos for like when you're kind of having a rough day or something's come up?
For me, sometimes I tend to get stuck in like what we're talking about, like feeling like regret in some of my actions or like embarrassment or anxiety. And, it's one thing to like have positive self-talk and like kind of talk yourself off that ledge, but it's a whole other to have like some kind of like physical act. So my therapist taught me this tapping exercise that stimulates both the left and right brain, and it helps calm you down. So I like to do that when I'm feeling particularly anxious, as well as a breathing exercise where you're like plugging one side of your nose and breathing in, and then unplugging the opposite side and breathing out.
Okay, is that connected to EDMR? Or what is it called?
EDMR, yeah.
Okay.
I think. Now I'm like blinking. EDMR. Yes.
EMDR?
EMDR. There we go. I was like, that doesn't sound right.
Wrong.
EMDR is the right one. It is. The tapping one is something that I learned through EMDR. So
And it works for you?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. It gives me something else to focus on. I'm a little like ADHD too. So it's like almost like having like a little fidget spinner to calm me down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am definitely somebody who will get anxious, and then all of a sudden, like, that's all I can think about is how anxious I am. And so I need something physical to relax me, especially on days where like maybe I can't like make it to the gym and exercise out some of that extra energy. So there's that one.
I really like that one. I've only done it once. It was like a session, and I was holding these little pulse things that you hold in your hand, and they kind of vibrate between the right and left. And I was so relaxed after that. I couldn't even believe it. But I get stuck in these mental cycles where it's like these kind of self-deprecating mental cycles, and I will acknowledge that I'm doing it and that I don't want to be doing it anymore, but I'll keep doing it.
Right.
And so I think that's a really good time to think, oh, maybe I should try some tapping or some nostril.
Yeah. So the tapping is when you don't have those little handhold things that are vibrating left and right. I found a therapist a few years ago after like a particularly hard time in my life. And she and I did an EMDR session, and within that we like dove into a very specific traumatic moment, and it was almost like reliving it. But like meanwhile holding these things, and then we did this exercise that kind of like helped create that space between it and like look at it differently. And all of a sudden, like you said, like I was incredibly calm, and I almost felt like I'm like, wow, I'm kind of over that moment now. Like I'm over that experience. Like I feel like it happened and it's done, and I learned from it, and it put me where I am today. So like if anyone can do EMDR, I like highly, highly recommend it, especially if you have significant trauma.
Nice. Yeah.
Sorry, got intense there.
That's good advice. Yeah. And I think my therapist also like ran me through the nostril thing, which I have to look up and like try again.
Yeah. I don't know why, but like I do it when I drive a lot. Like I'll just, because, you know, you're kind of like zoning out a little bit while you're driving. And sometimes that's when I get caught in the anxiety loop. And that's when I just like need a breath, especially if I'm on my way to something that I feel a little anxious about.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
If your art was to generate some kind of, 2 or 3 second audio snippet, what do you think it would sound like?
I think it would be like a buzzing, like that's what I think it would be.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think that because there's like some aspect of like it being 3D in a way, and like almost like you can enter it. And I'm just getting a buzzing. That's what came to mind first.
Okay, cool. It also makes me think of like being inside of a computer or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Virtual reality.
Well, I mean, if the brain made sounds like a computer processor sort of makes it buzzing, but like if the human brain, if like there was a sound that neurons made, I wonder if it would be
like our brain is a computer in a lot of ways. So
yeah,
I agree with that.
Cool. Okay, well, before we sign off, is there anything you want to say about your upcoming exhibition? Because this podcast will come out before opening night.
Yes. I'm just looking forward to seeing everybody there. I already feel like it's this like warm hug from all the support I've gotten. And so I don't have like a ton of expectation of like what will happen afterward, but I'm just really looking forward to having this community all together in one place. And I hope that some individuals make some like really great connections themselves and maybe take some art home.
Yay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show.